Developing. Low pressure is anchored out to the west and it's spinning the weather fronts our way. They've already made for some quite wet conditions across parts of Wales and southwest England earlier today, and that's spiralling northwards. So outbreaks of rain pushing into northern England, Northern Ireland and southern and central Scotland too. Much of eastern England, much of northern Scotland will stay dry. Here still a keen easterly wind. We could get down to 1 or 2 across parts of northern Scotland, but certainly further south it's a very mild night, certainly compared to recent nights. A dull, damp start then, particularly for North Wales, Northern England, Southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, but it should brighten up in many locations. Then we're looking at heavy showers breaking out really from mid-morning onwards.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, we're live from Buckingham Palace as we continue our countdown to the historic coronation of King Charles III. The excitement is palpable here, and I'm sure Saturday's momentous occasion will defy the odds and the British Bashing Corporation's negativity by uniting the country behind our new King, Charles III. Now look, I know the King is far from perfect, but I'll tell you why I will gladly pledge my allegiance as he is crowned in Westminster Abbey. That's in a special digest next. Afterwards, my superstar panel weigh in, and tonight, I can't wait to be joined by Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey, and Amy Nicole. There they are in the studio. Then my stellar lineup of royal insiders bring you the unfiltered reporting and analysis you won't find anywhere else in the MSM, live from the palace. Tom Bauer, he's going to be with me to preview the most important day of Charles's life as he prepares to come face to face with his estranged son Harry for the first time since the publication of Spare. And after penning a highly critical book about him in 2018, the esteemed writer and biographer reveals if he believes our new king has changed enough to secure the future of the monarchy. So Tom Bauer live with me soon. Camilla completes her extraordinary transformation from public enemy number one to queen on Saturday, while fresh reports confirm her two beloved stepsons won't speak at the ceremony. So how would Princess Diana react to the extraordinary events connected to the coronation? Her former butler and rock, Paul Burrell, offers his unique insight shortly. Elsewhere tonight, as Princess Diana's former private secretary, Patrick Jepson, says the coronation may still feel slightly unsettling for the million supporters of the People's Princess. Do you accept Camilla as the new queen? Well, Patrick is going to join me alongside David Emanuel and Ingrid Stewart to duke it out in the clash. Also coming up tonight, Harry's biographer Angela Levin reacts to The Spectator's Cara Kennedy's extraordinary report that the late Queen branded Meghan Markle evil and saw right through her. Her unfiltered analysis on that astonishing story coming up later this hour. Plus, after Donald Trump slammed Meghan during Nigel Farage's exclusive interview.
Well, I think that she has been very disrespectful to the Queen, frankly, even during that time.
Bombshell comments were echoed by a Montecito monarchist speaking to GB News on the Mall today.
And now they're basically your neighbours. How do you feel about that?
We're not happy. It's created a lot of hubbub, and his wife is not well liked.
But do my royal masterminds agree? Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier give their all-important view on that and much more very soon. Also, I'll show you how tomorrow's papers are building up to the big day, and there will be a small coronation of our own as we reveal the last Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week before the night is out. This is a special edition of Dan Wootton Tonight, live from Buckingham Palace. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel, live from Buckingham Palace. We have an extraordinary lineup. The best royal experts in the business are with me, from Tom Bauer to Lady Colin Campbell. Don't go anywhere the next 2 hours. Keeping us updated with the rest of the headlines, though, Polly Middlehurst now.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight. Members from the RMT union have voted to continue with their strike action. Unions involved in disputes have to reballot their members every 6 months to legally continue with walkouts. The RMT said there was an overwhelming vote in favour of the move. A man arrested following an incident at Buckingham Palace has been detained under the Mental Health Act. The 59-year-old threw suspected shotgun cartridges into the grounds on Tuesday evening. He's now been taken to hospital where he remains on bail. The Prince and Princess of Wales visited a pub in central London today ahead of the coronation. Large crowds turned up in Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple dipping into the Dog and Duck. And to get there, the pair travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time. Now, a fly past to celebrate the coronation may have to be cancelled due to poor weather. The MOD's warning it could hamper the ability of pilots to fly safely. Forecasters say they expect London to be cloudy and wet on Saturday. Rainfall is forecast around lunchtime. More than 60 aircraft are scheduled to fly over the Mall and Buckingham Palace at around 2:15. Now, in the United States, members of a far-right militia group have been convicted of plotting the attack on the US Capitol building. Donald Trump supporters stormed it in January 2021, trying to block Congress from formalising Joe Biden as president. 4 members of the Proud Boys group were found guilty of seditious conspiracy. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has cut short his visit to Ireland, returning home to confront an accuser, as he puts it, in a civil rape case. He's currently on a flight back to the States after visiting his golf courses in Ireland and in Scotland. He's described the case as a political attack and says he'll probably attend the hearing. He's been accused of the rape of a former magazine columnist in 1996, a charge he denies.
Everybody having a good time?
Meanwhile, making her way in the other direction across the Atlantic is the First Lady of the United States. Jill Biden has tweeted to say she's on her way to the UK for the coronation, and she said she's honoured to represent the United States for this historic moment. And Ed Sheeran has won a legal copyright case that accused him of copying parts of a Marvin Gaye classic. The family of one of the writers of Let's Get It On accused Ed of replicating parts of the hit song for his own track, Thinking Out Loud. Jurors, though, found he had not infringed on the family's copyright interest in the song. Here's what he said.
I'm obviously very happy with the outcome of the case, and it looks like I'm not having to retire from my day job after all. But at the same time, I'm unbelievably frustrated that baseless claims like this are allowed to go to court at all. We've spent the last 8 years talking about 2 songs with dramatically different lyrics, melodies and 4 chords which are also different and used by songwriters every day all over the world.
Ed Sheeran speaking in New York a short time ago. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The British Bashing Corporation might bristle as they give a consistent platform to UK-hating hard-left Republicans on an almost hourly basis at the moment, alongside the likes of Woke ITV and Sly News. But I believe Saturday's coronation will defy the odds by bringing the country together behind our new king. Charles III isn't perfect. Unlike most TV news presenters, I'm always honest with you about what I really think. And Charles's desire to meddle in politics, indulge in the lunacy of the woke mob on dangerous concepts like historic reparations for slavery, and his obsession with the deranged march to net zero, they have been a concern. And I've put all of that on the record. But as a monarchist, a great supporter of our peerless royal family, and someone so proud to be a dual citizen of Britain and the Commonwealth nation of New Zealand, I have never willed someone on to succeed with so much passion. If Charles has the discipline of his magnificent mother, the late great Queen Elizabeth II, whose memory still looms large here, he could just secure the future of the royal family into another century. This week, you've seen the hard left media try to paint a picture of growing Republican fervour in Britain. You would almost believe Harry and Meghan were going to ride back to the country on their private jet, backed by a woke mob of Just Stop Oil eco-terrorists to turn Buckingham Palace into some sort of squatter's den. But of course, that's not the reality. Support for the British monarchy remains sky high, especially given the division elsewhere in this toxic world of social media. Charles has the greatest support possible in his heir, Prince William, whose wonderful family, especially wife Kate, are the future of the British monarchy, who will one day continue the legacy of the late, great Princess Diana. And despite my ardent loyalty to the Queen of People's Hearts, I have wrestled with my own conscience over the past few months, and from Saturday onwards I accept the concept of Queen Camilla, something I never thought I would say. I believe, despite our many challenges and divisions, the United Kingdom remains the greatest country in the world. And our monarchy is something to be incredibly proud of. So the nasty BBC Republicans like Ash Sarkar can mock me all they want. But I will gladly pledge my allegiance to King Charles III this Saturday as he is crowned in Westminster Abbey. And to respond now, let me bring in my superstar panel back in the studio. Top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Alison Pearson, you look fabulous tonight preparing for Coronation weekend. Tell me, Alison, do you think the country will pull together behind King Charles over the next few days?
I've been trying to find a crown, Dan, because I was very jealous of Amanda Patel's crown. So if you see any going spare...
You're still our queen tonight.
Around the palace, thank you. Yeah, I think they will. I think there's a general feeling of warm wishes towards him. I mean, really, you'd have to be pretty mean-spirited, wouldn't you, to not wish him well. The guy's been waiting 70 years to ascend to the throne. I'm a monarchist like you. I have had some doubts about him in the past. It was very interesting this week, actually, that a poll by Lord Ashcroft found that half of the British people would support a constitutional monarchy. They'd vote for it. I mean, that's incredible, with only a quarter against. And the majority of people said, look, we know it's a funny old system, but it works. And I feel that. I feel it's weird. It's hard to defend a monarchy when you're in a democracy, but it's our weird old system, and people still like it. As you say, we've seen people on the BBC had a panorama programme, which was very down on it. Newsnight's been spitting. The guys over at Channel 4 look like they've swallowed a wasp every time they mention it. But I think the general feeling is willing him on now to do well. He has huge shoes to fill following his mother. But the most interesting finding in that poll was a huge number of people, including Republicans, do not want King Charles to apologise for slavery or colonialism. They don't want a cringing crown.
Of course.
So I think he has to be a strong monarch and impartial like his mother was, because he's going to get into trouble if he isn't.
Absolutely, and be proud of Britain. That's what we want. Sean Bailey, it's really interesting. Alison mentioned some of the other media coverage there. I saw it tonight myself with Paul Brand on Woke ITV. Watching his report about the future of the British monarchy, you'd believe that there was some sort of huge groundswell for change. In fact, there's not.
Look, the BBC have to be very careful here, because the very people who would support the BBC, you'll largely find the people who like the traditions of this country, including the monarchy. And as we hurtle towards the point where the BBC's funding is changed, it's inevitable that we'll have to look at the licence fee. The BBC needs to figure out who it talks to. But let's be clear, the BBC are also correct to have a different view of the world, have maybe some different voices in there. But they can only do that if they do that on everything, and that's where the problem lies. Because I remind everyone about the Shamima Begum podcast when the BBC did that. Where was the balance in that? Now, they'll tell you it was in the actual programme, but many a person would argue that actually there wasn't. Where was the continued conversation around, is it right, is it wrong, who is she, etc., etc.? So if the BBC are going to play both sides of the story, they need to make sure they consistently do that across all of their big stories. Of course, the monarchy is a very unique story and needs to be looked at, but I do believe the BBC need to be even-handed all over the place. And look, they also need to bear in mind, it's going to be a great big party. I mean, it's a bank holiday. Everybody's looking forward to this. I sat next to one of my colleagues this morning at our celebration around this, and she's a Republican, and even she said she was happy to come and represent the people she's elected to represent, because they also might be monarchists as well. So I think everybody's looking to enjoy this weekend.
Absolutely.
Amy Nicole, I was absolutely delighted walking around central London today to see the city open, number one. Members of the public are walking behind us. They have access still to the Buckingham Palace grounds, to Westminster Abbey. But what really struck me is that for the first time since the unnecessary lockdowns of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a buzz in this city. And I don't think the media, apart from GB News, is really picking that up, the broadcast media at least. Where do you sit on this, Amy? Are you with your woke mates like Ash Sarkar, or do you actually concede that even lefties want to get behind King Charles this weekend?
I guess it's important to note that Ash Sarkar doesn't work for the BBC. She was just interviewed as an independent journalist. And of course, we live in a democracy, and in our democracy, 20% of people identify as Republicans. In fact, only 15% consider themselves royalists, which actually put the royalists in the minority. And I think the royalists
what do you identify as?
Absolutely. I'm wavering, Dan. So I used to sway more to republicanism. But
that
now I can recognise
doesn't surprise me, Amy.
I can recognise the importance of the monarchy and the fact that, well, if it ain't broke, does it need fixing? That kind of way of thinking about it. And when you look at the amount of power that the monarch has, it really is a very, very soft power. However, for me, this whole this whole coronation and the cost to the taxpayer, it has highlighted the government's failures, because it's shown that when it suits
Amy.
them, there is a magic money tree. So I feel like if we can,
why
if we
don't you
can
just
afford
celebrate
this
King Charles
coronation,
tonight
which
and
I
not make this
absolutely
political?
welcome, because I think everybody is saying we have more food banks than McDonald's in this country.
Well, by the way, your financial argument doesn't stack up, given that the coronation is going to bring £150 billion into our economy. So the argument doesn't stack up. Sean, final word to you.
Shows that we have the money when
Just to clear up, Amy, the government has no choice. This is the responsibility of the government. They can't pick and choose if they're going to support the democracy of this country. This is a legal part of our democracy, and the government have to pay for it.
Can we just? I think we should pay £150 million for seeing Prince Louis escape off the balcony and go down and see Grandpa Charles. What do we think, Dan?
I have no problem with spending this money on the coronation, but I just would like to see more money spent in other
and
areas
I will take
as well.
the £1 billion that it will pump into our economy. Look, thank you so much. My superstar panel cannot think of three better people I would rather spend this exciting night with. Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole, do stand by. But coming up, is Donald Trump right that Meghan Markle disrespected the late Queen in her final days due to the Duchess's relentless assaults on the monarchy? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, they are with me live here at Buckingham Palace shortly. But up next in the clash, as Princess Diana's former private secretary Patrick Jepson says the coronation may still feel slightly unsettling for the millions of supporters of the People's Princess. Do you accept Camilla as the new queen? So Patrick joins me alongside Diana's wedding dress designer David Emmanuel, close friend of the late princess and editor of Majesty magazine Ingrid Stewart. But of course, your voice most important to me. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Go and vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. The results and the clash straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Royal Masterminds Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier coming up, but it's time now for The Clash. And anticipation is building here at Buckingham Palace with less than 2 days to go before Charles is crowned king. But for his wife and rock Camilla, Saturday will cement a mighty transformation from world's most hated second women to Queen of the United Kingdom. A recent poll revealed only 14% of Brits support Camilla being called Queen, with her overall support wilting behind all royals except Princess Eugenie and Beatrice, disgraced Prince Andrew and treacherous Prince Harry. But for those who remember King Charles's wedding to the late Diana and who hold the people's princess so dearly in their hearts, there will be a feeling that this could and should have been her big moment. That feeling was captured perfectly by Diana's former private secretary Patrick Drepson, who wrote in the Daily Mail, "All of this rejoicing with its tinge of triumphalism may still feel slightly unsettling." So tonight I'm asking you this: do you accept Camilla as the new Queen? A very simple question. Let me know your thoughts down at gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News Now on Twitter. The results shortly. But doing battle on this now, the man himself, Diana's former private secretary, Patrick Drepson, editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, one of our regular royal contributors, Ingrid Seward, and Diana's former dress designer, David Emmanuel. He was, of course, very close to the late princess. So, Patrick, I read your column with a lot of fascination because you're incredibly measured. You're not taking any sort of cruel approach when it comes to Camilla, but you're just making a point that I think millions of Brits agree with, that we can't forget the impact Diana had.
Well, Dan, I think it was very well timed that you should mention those polls, that only 14% are happy with Camilla being called Queen. There may be lots of reasons for that, but there's no doubt that Diana herself recognized that she would probably never be Queen, but she wanted to be Queen in people's hearts. And it's in people's hearts that this battle is won or lost.
No, I totally agree. David Emmanuel, you don't feel you can accept Queen Camilla.
Well, look, it's highly charged, the whole situation. I'm behind the scenes, goodness knows what's going on. But, yeah, that's what we were sold on, weren't we? It was, I understood from Her Majesty the Queen, she said she should be Queen Consort. Now, suddenly, she's now going to be Queen. And it's very difficult because a lot of people have told me they're unhappy about it. So I'm not surprised by the polls at all. But I did hear, I don't know if you know this story, I heard that there was a coronation dinner, which obviously the King and Camilla was there. And apparently the Princess Royal, I don't know if you heard this one, the Princess Royal said, "You're not Queen, you're the Queen's consort." Did you hear that one? That's spinning around.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Now, I'm not one to spread
Wow, that's
gossip,
a fascinating
but this is what I've
revelation.
heard from quite a few sources. Yep. And it was a big...
Goodness gracious me. So,
yeah, there was a big
So to
showdown.
clarify, you have heard that Princess Anne said to Camilla's face
You're
that
not
you are
queen.
Queen Consort, not Queen.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I
That's pretty
hadn't
sad.
heard
So you can
that.
imagine in the Abbey, I mean, it's going to be so emotionally charged. You've got Diana's sister, Diana's, the Spencers will be there, Camilla's children will be there, and what are they all thinking? What is the country thinking? You know, it's... A lot of emotion, but we have to remember it's a religious ceremony, of course. And, you know, we have to remember he was being bred to be king. It was always understood he was going to be king. And there's a lot of stuff that's happening. Well, Patrick would know more than I, but...
Well, I mean, I think that's fascinating because, Dan, one of the reasons I think there is so much doubt over Camilla's status in people's minds is the kind of game of semantics that the palace has played with us over the last 25 years. You may remember, Camilla was, first of all, just a friend. And then she was a non-negotiable friend. And then, OK, she was a lover. It's hard to deny after some of the tapes we heard. But the official line then was, yes, but there is no chance that Charles and Diana will separate. And when they did separate, there's no chance they will divorce. And when they divorced, there was no chance that Charles would remarry. And if he did remarry, he wouldn't marry Camilla. And if he did marry Camilla, she would not be anything more than just behind the scenes supporting her man. And then she might be princess consort when he ascended the throne. And then she was queen consort. And now, hey presto, she's queen. They have been playing games with us. It's a series of half-truths.
Absolutely. We've been drip-fed, haven't we, really?
And of course, we should point out that the Queen, well, indeed, and the late Queen herself, on the day that she had spent 70 years on the throne, only said that Camilla would be Queen Consort. So did the Queen ever sign up to the idea of Queen Camilla? I don't know. But look, Ingrid Stewart, I know you feel differently on this. You think folk need to move on and accept Queen Camilla. Why?
I think that this is what King Charles wants. He's always wanted Camilla by his side. He wanted to marry Camilla. She didn't want to marry him. But I think he has... I mean, we might have been, as Patrick very eloquently put, we might have been diffused with all different stories. But Charles always said Camilla was non-negotiable, and in his heart, he wanted her at his side. He wants her to be crowned queen. I'm sure she's extremely nervous about this because she's very aware that there is forever a ghost of Diana. And I think she's nervous, but this is what Charles wants. And as king, this is what Charles gets. And I feel that we should, you know, try and embrace it because they're being a modern couple. I mean, there are so many divorcees getting remarried.
Indeed. And look, I've really wrestled with this, Patrick Jepson, over the last few months. I'm not going to lie. I initially was not comfortable even with the idea of Camilla being Queen Consort, but I spoke to Paul Burrell on the show, and he said, look, by this point, Dan, Diana herself would have moved on. She would have accepted this. I mean, you obviously knew Diana incredibly well. You worked for her for years. Do you think Diana, in 2023, if she was still here, would be okay by now with the concept of Queen Camilla?
I think a lot would depend on how well her husband or ex-husband treated her.
Yeah.
In his lifetime, he wasn't terribly good at treating her well, or even with respect.
Yeah.
And I think Diana was a wise person, mature beyond her years in many ways. She understood human nature. She loved her husband. And more than once, to me, she recognized that he needed this person. And I think that Diana would have, of course, you know, she wanted his happiness. She wanted her children's happiness. And in the fullness of time, if she was properly, respectfully treated, it's not impossible that she might have been sitting next to Andrew Parker Bowles in the congregation on Saturday. That would be a picture I would have been very interested to see. Imagine what they would have had to discuss.
What may have been, because you're very right to point out, of course, Camilla's ex-husband will be at the Abbey to see his ex-wife become queen, which is extraordinary in itself. My goodness, you three, absolutely incredible. I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much, Diana's former private secretary, Patrick Jepson, the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, and with all the scoops tonight, Diana's wedding dress designer, David Emmanuel. But who do you agree with? Do you accept Camilla as the new queen? Matthew writes via Twitter, yes, I do accept Queen Camilla. She's done a lot of good, especially supporting victims of domestic violence. Her Majesty loves our king and will continue to be a great support to him. Katie on Twitter writes, we all have Diana in our hearts, but we can't get her back. Diana never hated Camilla. She told Ingrid Seward that it wasn't her who shattered her marriage to Charles, but those around them. And from Celia, I will absolutely not accept Queen Camilla. Queen consort, fine, but she can never live up to Queen Elizabeth II. And your verdict is now in. I thought this one would be split, and it is. 60% of you say you will accept Camilla as your new queen. 40% of you say you won't. So this is still a nation divided on the issue of Queen Camilla. Coming up, The Spectator's Cara Kennedy sensationally claims the late Queen called Meghan Markle evil. So does Angela Levin agree that Elizabeth II would have seen right through the Duchess? She's going to join me live here at Buckingham Palace shortly. But next, was Meghan disrespectful to the late Queen with her relentless assaults on the monarchy? That was Donald Trump's bombshell assessment last night. And my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, have their say at Buckingham Palace straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Live from Buckingham Palace, I'm delighted to be joined now by our peerless royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. It is great to have both of you in the flesh at Buckingham Palace. And there is a celebratory mood in the air, Lady C, is there not?
Isn't it wonderful? Yeah, it's
Britain's
palpable.
back.
Britain's back with a bang.
Yeah. Phil, do you sense that
people are
too?
flying in from all over the world, people are camping out, and that's just to see Lady C, you know, so I mean, regardless of, but it's great. The atmosphere is fantastic. It's been a bit of a slow burner, but now I think everyone's getting into it.
It has, and look, there is a historic precedent for that, Lady C, isn't there? With previous coronations, if you look back the past 100 years, in the weeks before the coronation, the media was saying, oh, there's not that much buzz. Same with the Jubilees.
That's
as we
right.
know, Queen Elizabeth II's Jubilee. There's something very British about getting behind these big royal events at the last minute, and I think the country's going to come together.
Well, I think it's national bonding, and you know, this is an occasion for people to indulge in their national identity and celebrate it, and it's wonderful. It's very spontaneous. They just do it quite naturally, don't you think?
I think so. Do you, Phil?
I do. I mean, as you say, with some of the Jubilees, they were saying it was going to be a complete wipeout and people weren't going to turn up, and of course in the end they turn up in their hundreds of thousands, and I'm sure it'll be the same on Saturday, so it's going to be a great day. Apart from the weather.
But look, the Montecito Moaners, as we call them, they have been doing their best to derail the coronation, and it hasn't gone unnoticed by the Montecito monarchists. I absolutely love this. It's my favourite moment of the day from GBNews Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. He was on the Mall where he had this incredible conversation.
You've travelled from California?
Yes, Montecito, California.
And Montecito, California is important because?
Because Harry moved there.
And now they're basically your neighbours. How do you feel about that?
We're not happy. It's created a lot of hubbub, and his wife is not well liked. They feel like she was the impetus behind disrupting his family relationships, and I feel that he was disrespectful of his grandmother, who was a magnificent woman.
And Kim's views were echoed by none other than Donald J. Trump in a major world-exclusive interview with our very own Nigel Farage.
Well, I think that she has been very disrespectful to the Queen, frankly, even during that time. I mean, how can you be disrespectful to the Queen? She went through years and years and decades without controversy and just did a great job. You cannot be disrespectful to her. And I think Meghan was very disrespectful to her. She was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
So, Lady C, I mean, what an incredible woman from Montecito. Maybe that's one of the reasons she chose to stay away. Even the Americans in the crowd would have booed her.
Well, the reality is, of course, because I know from friends of mine in Montecito that she and he are reviled in Montecito.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, that woman backed you up there.
Good.
Phil, do you agree with Donald Trump's assessment that actually they caused the late Queen huge distress in her final days?
I do, actually. I mean, when you think what the Queen had to put up with in the last couple of years of her life, she was in lockdown like the rest of us. She lost her husband. She had to deal with Prince Andrew. You know, the last thing she needed was the Ginger Whinger and his wife having a go. And I honestly think a combination of those things probably shaved a couple of years off her life. I mean, I think a lot of us thought she might make it to 100, but 96 was a fantastic innings, but it'd been lovely to have her another couple of years. But I think it really affected her, and you know, I think he's got a point. You know, it was very, very stressful, particularly as she was so close to Harry at one point.
Lady C, the word Trump used was disrespectful. I think you go further than that in terms of Meghan and Harry's treatment of the late Queen and the late Prince Philip.
Oh, absolutely. I think not only were they disrespectful, they were abusive, elder abuse.
What do you mean by that? Because obviously it wasn't physical abuse,
Well,
obviously. So would you say psychological trauma? They caused psychological
emotional,
trauma.
spiritual, psychological abuse. You know, elder abuse isn't only physical, it is mistreating somebody. So it goes beyond disrespect. You know, they knew that Prince Philip was dying, and they actually had the unmitigated gall to say that possibly Prince Philip was faking it to prevent their interview, and
which they still went ahead with, knowing he was in the hospital.
That's right.
And we can't forget that.
That's right. And look at what happened with the Queen. I mean, their hair, she's asked them to go to Balmoral. They refused to go to Balmoral. They know she's dying. I know she's dying. We all knew she was dying. And they couldn't be bothered. But then, when there was the possibility of a photo op at the time of her death, they want to be there for the photo op. And you know, the Queen loved Harry. And can you imagine how disappointed she was to see that somebody she loved and had nurtured all his life had turned on her in the way he did? I think it's awful. I'm sorry. It's much more than disrespect.
It's going to be fascinating to see the reception he gets from the rest of the family, isn't it, on Saturday? Wherever he is.
What are you hearing about that, Lady C? Because I'm told really the only person who actually even wants to have a conversation with Harry is Charles. All of the other royals want nothing to do with the bloke at the weekend.
Well, I'm told that not even Charles is so eager. Yeah. I mean, he's going to be correct, and it's his son, and he understands that Harry has huge emotional and... No, I think it goes beyond that. He wants the civility because he's a gentleman, but he also wants to leave the door open so that when Harry turns over a new leaf, gives up substances, gives up being a member of the cult of Meghan, that maybe there's a way back for him.
Maybe that will happen sooner rather than later. Look, at GB News, we couldn't actually be more excited about this historic coronation, but I have been fascinated, absolutely fascinated, looking at the rest of the British media coverage over the last few days. And you would believe we were living in a totally different country. You would believe that there was a vast Republican movement in this country. I mean, woke ITV News tonight, Lady C, began with what they described as a bombshell poll. They very much want to paint a picture of the country moving towards republicanism. Why do you think so many parts of our media are not prepared to embrace King Charles III?
Well, you know, for instance, take ITV. Dame Caroline McCall.
Former boss of The Guardian,
Former boss of The Guardian, but a dame. She accepted a damehood from the monarchy, but she is rabidly anti-monarchist.
Well, she's Team Meghan as well.
Oh, yes, of course, of course. She's
has direct contact with Meghan, we know, who can influence editorial decisions. For example, the departure of Piers Morgan from Good Morning Bristol.
I'm glad you put it so delicately. I'd have said she booted him out ignominiously. And I think Piers should have actually sued her the clutch box off that woman. That's what... I think she's dreadful. I've actually crossed swords with her privately over something that happened with me with her. And she is unspeakably dreadful. I don't think that she should actually have the position she has. You know, she is supposed to be neutral. She is not supposed to be pushing an anti-royalist, pro-Republican agenda the way she does.
Well, I can't believe this ITV poll, Phil, which, by the way, still shows overwhelming support for the monarchy, has been presented as something that it's not. It's like, what is the agenda here? And they're saying, oh, we're going to put on lots of Republican guests on Saturday. That's not what the public wants, is it?
No, I think Republics see this as an opportunity. They knew that while the Queen was here, it's very difficult for them, but now they're trying to seize upon it. And as you say, you've got quite a few woke people in charge of media organisations who are trying to push this. And they present these polls, and it may be 64% in favour of the monarchy instead of 75% when the Queen was around. Well, that's fairly inevitable, isn't it? You know, but they, as you say, they present it as if it's, you know, the other way around, as if it's a majority want to get rid of the monarchy. So I think these polls will come and go, but you know, younger people who might not be in favour of the monarchy, they get older, don't they? And then they change their minds, like they do about a lot of other things. So you know, I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see William on the throne. I don't think you know, we're going to see the end of the monarchy just yet.
No, but this is an important weekend for Charles. It has to go well, but my sense is that it will. Do you agree, Lady
No, I
C?
think it's going to go very well.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go brilliantly.
Yeah.
You know, he's recalibrated things in a way that actually, when you stop to think of it, even though I don't agree with 100%, by and large, I think I agree with most of it.
Yeah, I do too.
You know?
I do too. I mean, he's a little bit too woke for my liking at times, but if he's going to try and bring some of those people along with him...
Well, ironically,
Phil,
the young people will like a lot of what he says, won't they? Or should do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, indeed. Well, look, it's been so brilliant to have you with me on this very special edition of the show at Buckingham Palace. Oh, brilliant Royal Masterminds, the best in the business. Phil Dampier, Lady Colin Campbell, thank you so much. Have an amazing weekend. I know you've got big plans. But coming up, as the Met says their tolerance for disruption of the coronation will be low in terms of protests, while an extreme ring of the radical anti-monarchy movement plans to stage real demonstrations on Saturday. Are they right to steer troublemakers away from using the event as a platform to cause disruption? My superstar panel return to debate that soon. But next, Angela Levin joins me to react to The Spectator's Cara Kennedy's sensational report that the late Queen, wait for this, called Meghan Markle evil. This was just last year, and saw right through her. The details of that absolute bombshell coming up in just a few minutes' time.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Live from Buckingham Palace, as you can see, a big motorcade going on behind us. We're right in the heart of this as our countdown to the coronation continues with Prince Harry's biographer, Angela Levin. And in an extraordinary revelation today that will rock the Sussexes to their core, it's been reported the late Queen grew so exasperated with the vile behaviour of Harry and Meghan that she described the Duchess of Sussex's, wait for it, evil during a Balmoral drinks reception last year. Now, that bombshell claim was made in an article by Spectator staff writer Cara Kennedy, with a royal source sensationally telling her everybody's eyebrows hit the ceiling. It was out of character for the Queen to use such a word as evil to describe Meghan, but she saw straight through her. It was a startling sentence to hear from the most forgiving woman on earth. The source added to The Spectator, at the drinks before the dinner, a small group were talking to the monarch, and she explained that Harry meeting Meghan had become a complete catastrophe. By this point, we all knew the Queen's health was in decline and she had months left. She seemed regretful about how things had panned out. So, Angela Levin, firstly, delightful to have you with us here for this special celebration at Buckingham Palace. There's a brilliant excitement in the air. But, wow, this was a bombshell from Cara Kennedy of The Spectator today. What do you make of it? Do you think the Queen, the late Queen, did feel that way about Meghan?
I think that she was obviously exasperated by her. I think she tried very hard. She saw that she would have a great future, that she could go and help with the Commonwealth. It would be ideal, spread the colour of the royal family. So for her to say this, if it's absolutely true, and I think it wouldn't get published if it wasn't, then it's dreadfully sad for her. She adored Harry. They had the same sense of humour. They were very close. And she knew that he was vulnerable. And so she wanted to really help him. And though to feel that, she only wanted him to be happy and get married. He was longing to get married. So, you know, she's saying what a lot of other people have felt for quite a long time. If you see her picture when they were getting married, you look at her and you see there's no smile, there's no excitement there. It's just looking at her feeling very, very miserable.
And Tom Bower, who will be with us in the next hour, of course, for his book on Meghan, his brilliant biography on Meghan Revenge, revealed that the Queen, on the day of Prince Philip's funeral, had said, thank goodness Meghan isn't coming. So I think clearly, while she was alive, the late Queen didn't want to add to any of the frenzied coverage around Meghan. But I think over the next few months and years, we're going to learn just how horrified she was about the way that Meghan treated the royal family.
Well, treated her as well. I mean, the last few months...
In her dying days.
In the last few months, Harry was ringing up almost every day to demand money and to demand protection.
Really was ringing the Queen?
Yes, and was nagging her to get what he wanted in all sorts of areas. And you can't imagine anything worse of a 96-year-old woman who's really in a lot of pain, who's lost her husband, that a member of her family who she'd adored would behave so badly.
So, of course, Angela, in the context of this report today, Harry, in less than 48 hours' time, has to face his family for the first time, including the father, who he attacked time and again in his book, his stepmother, who he has described as being dangerous and a villain, and his brother William, who he accused of being a bully. I mean, how is this reunion going to go down?
Well, I think he will sort of half pretend he's not there. I don't think he wants to accept the reality of it.
So autopilot almost.
So yes, so he will come, but I think him going immediately and catching a plane back is actually a snub and a very appalling thing to do, because I worked out he couldn't get there till 8 p.m. A 4-year-old doesn't need a birthday party at 8 p.m. He'll have been jumping and getting excited all day long. He could have easily waited for his daddy the next day. And I think that Harry was told he had to be back by a certain time. And Harry could not actually be strong enough to say to his wife, look, just put it off for a day, please.
I know. What is really interesting, though, is the fact that they've sent out their little lap dog, you know, this odd little bloke, Omid Scobie. I've seen him walking all around here tonight, you know, because he's the person who speaks for Harry and Meghan now, and to try and blame Buckingham Palace for all of this and paint Harry as some sort of hero for coming.
Yeah, I've never heard such nonsense as to him to say, well, they had to wait quite a while before they were invited. Well, the invitations came out ages ago, and we read in the papers that Harry and Meghan had that save the day. So that's complete nonsense. In any case, he could have rung up and had a chat. He's supposed to be talking to his father, obviously he's not. And his father said, of course I want you. He doesn't need anything else. It's not a great thing. He doesn't have to see the invitation. He just has to hear those words. But we have seen over the last 2 years or 3 years that it's never their fault.
No,
it's never neither of their fault.
Saint Harry and Meghan, remember?
It's always
Saint Harry and Meghan.
It's always other people's fault.
Big report in the Daily Telegraph today saying yet again that William wants nothing to do with Harry on this trip. Is that your understanding?
Yes, absolutely. He's furious with him. I mean, he's invaded his privacy while suing other people for invading his own privacy.
The irony.
Yes, but also he wants to protect Catherine, and he's realised that it's been very difficult for her. She's had to learn well, she had to donate herself to the royal family, which she has done absolutely brilliantly, and he doesn't want some snippet attacking her and being unkind.
So you think William almost wants to protect Kate?
Very much so.
And not have her in Harry's orbit?
I think he can cope with it because he's a strong man and he just will cut it off. You can see he's blocked it out. But actually he cares very, very much for his wife and will not stand for her to be criticised in that hideous way.
Fascinating insight as ever from Angela Levin, of course, the biographer of Prince Harry and Queen Camilla. Angela, you're going to be with us back on Monday night.
Yes.
So, of course, we'll have all the behind-the-scenes news about what exactly went down on Saturday. Angela, thank you so much. But coming up, with the warring Windsor brothers still not speaking, how would Diana react to the extraordinary events connected to the coronation? Well, her former butler and rock, Paul Burrell, offers his fascinating insight live here at Buckingham Palace soon. But first, are police right to promise a low-tolerance crackdown on radical anti-monarchist protesters trying to disrupt the coronation? My superstar panel will return to debate that next, and we're going to have the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. See you very soon.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News. In a moment, we get back to Dan Wootton and tonight's edition of his programme. But for the moment, let's bring you up to date with the latest news headlines. And we can bring you up to date, first of all, on the local elections. Polls have now closed. Of course, it is 10 o'clock across England, with the results being announced tomorrow. We'll give you full coverage of that right here on GB News. Well, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is standing by. He's in Middlesbrough, where they're going to be choosing a mayor as well today with the very latest. Darren, what is the latest where you are? What was the turnout like?
Yeah, very good evening, Polly, from Middlesbrough, where the polls have just closed. If I could tell you the turnout, that would be pretty impressive, wouldn't it, considering they closed 30 seconds ago. But the counting will be underway here pretty soon, as in many parts of the country. 8,000 council seats up for grabs. It's all about expectation management over the next 24 hours or so. The Conservatives trying to claim that they could lose up to 1,000 seats. Anything less than that, they will claim somewhat as a victory. As for the Labour Party, pressure on them too. They're expected to do a hell of a lot better than the Conservatives, but it's how well they do. Many suggesting they'll need at least a 10% lead over the Tory party if they are on a convincing track to win the next general election. And how well will the Lib Dems do as well? They have put an awful lot of effort into trying to win seats in the Conservative Blue Wall. We'll start to get results in the wee small hours of tomorrow morning, but the key battlegrounds will probably come mid-morning on Friday. We'll get a sense of just how well parties have done at local level, and maybe a sense too of how they are doing at national level as well.
Darren McCaffrey, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Yes, and indeed, all those results for you will be on GB News tomorrow. Now, in other news today, members of the RMT union have voted to continue with their strike action. Unions involved in disputes have had to reballot their members, and it has to happen every 6 months to legally continue with walkouts. The RMT said there was an overwhelming vote in favour of the move. In Coronation news, a man arrested following an incident at Buckingham Palace has been detained under the Mental Health Act. The 59-year-old threw suspected shotgun cartridges into the grounds of the palace on Tuesday evening. It's believed he's been taken to hospital, where he remains on bail. Now, flowers and foliage from all over the UK has arrived at Westminster Abbey ahead of the coronation. Over 120 varieties of plants have been provided by a non-profit group that champions artisan growers. They'll showcase the best of British, taken from areas including the Isle of Skye, Cornwall and Northern Ireland. No single-use plastics or foam have been used in the arrangements either. Now, in news this evening from the United States, members of a far-right militia group have been convicted of plotting the attack on the US Capitol building. Donald Trump supporters stormed the building in January 2021 to try to block Congress from formalising Joe Biden as president. 4 members of the so-called Proud Boys group were found guilty of seditious conspiracy. And lastly, Ed Sheeran has won a legal copyright case that accused him of copying parts of a Marvin Gaye classic. The family of one of the writers of the track Let's Get It On accused Ed of replicating parts of the hit song for his own track, Thinking Out Loud. Jurors, though, found he had not infringed on the family's copyright interest in the song.
I'm obviously very happy with the outcome of the case, and it looks like I'm not having to retire from my day job after all. But at the same time, I'm unbelievably frustrated that baseless claims like this are allowed to go to court at all. We've spent the last 8 years talking about 2 songs with dramatically different lyrics, melodies and 4 chords which are also different and used by songwriters every day all over the world.
Ed Sheeran speaking outside a court in New York earlier on today. You are up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Let's take you straight back to Buckingham Palace and Dan.
I'm Dan Wootton, live from Buckingham Palace. And tonight, I have to tell you, you can truly feel the anticipation in the air ahead of one of the biggest events in modern British history, the coronation of King Charles III. On Saturday, the late Queen's son will be crowned less than a mile away at Westminster Abbey, in a moment he's been preparing for his entire life. And after decades of waiting in the wings, I'll be asking if the man we've known as Charles can secure the future of the British monarchy. Tom Bower, who was previously one of the King's biggest critics, joins me live to explain why he's changed his mind about our new monarch as we look ahead to a fascinating age for the royal family. But breaking tonight in an extraordinary revelation, The Spectator's Cara Kennedy reports that the late Queen branded Meghan evil at a Balmoral drinks reception just last year. To react, I'll be joined by Princess Diana's rock and former butler, Paul Burrell, as he beseeches the Sussexes not to make this the Harry and Meghan show. Plus, he'll offer his unique insight into what Diana would have made of Queen Camilla. In the media buzz, as it's revealed, an extreme wing of the anti-monarchy movement is beginning to mobilise. Is the Met Police's warning that they'll, quote, deal robustly with any coronation protesters the right action to take? I'll get the views of my superstar panel on that next. Tonight, I'm joined by Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole. After American megastar Lionel Richie entertained the King yesterday at a Palace garden party, saying he's like a kid at Christmas time. Have British A-listers like Elton John, Harry Styles and Adele let the country down by snubbing Sunday's Coronation concert? And finally, the Prince and Princess of Wales, well, they have been building the bank holiday fever today as they hopped on a tube and bumped into social media sensation and railway enthusiast Francis Bourgeois.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you.
Hi, how you doing? Hi.
And after that, it was off to the Dog and Duck pub. But does Britain's next in line to the throne know how to pour a good pint? Well, that's going to be some fun later this hour. There'll also be a special royal-themed Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. We'll have the first front pages in mere moments too. This is a special edition of Dan Wootton Tonight, live from Buckingham Palace. But as usual, it's time for tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. So let's kick off with the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. I've even got them here at Buckingham Palace. The Metro features some cheeky wordplay in the headline. Send him Hectorious, as they report on that visit by Kate and Wills to a Soho pub earlier today. I'm jealous. The Guardian features 4 different headlines, including the US and UK's challenge to technology firms over the potential dangers of artificial intelligence. But there is no mention of the upcoming coronation from the British-hating Guardian. The Eye reports the shocking stat that oil company Shell have forcibly fitted over 4,000 prepay meters in British homes while raking in a record £32 billion in profit. My superstar panel back with me now from the studio, top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate, the top Tory Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Now, breaking tonight, bitter Republican groups intent on spoiling the festivities this weekend are threatening to hold their biggest protest in 40 years, including a student-led campaign group on the extreme wing of the radical anti-monarchy movement. The Times reports that demonstrators from No More Royals will join up with mainstream campaigners Republic and hooligans from other groups who previously hurled eggs at the King. That was illegal, of course. But the Met Police have issued a powerful warning to any potential troublemakers, saying our tolerance for any disruption, whether through protest or otherwise, will be low. We will deal robustly with anyone intent on undermining this celebration. Civil rights group Liberty has raised its own concern that the police's planned use of facial recognition for the coronation over fears it will be an authoritarian overreach. Now look, you know where I stand on this. Of course, I believe in the right to protest. I think police should refrain from misusing or overreaching when it comes to their powers. But personally, I also think that these rabble-rousing Republicans are doing this on the wrong day. Alison Pearson, what do you reckon?
Well, Dan, there are going to be 11,500 police on the streets, I think, on Saturday, and that's more than that were there at the Queen's funeral. I hope it will be good-humoured policing. I think a crackdown would be out of place. During the Platinum Jubilee, there were quite a lot of people who were trying to get to the Mall, who friends of mine, in fact, and they were pushed back. So I'm hoping it will be very good-humoured. I think the No More Royals and Republic groups are handily going to be wearing yellow T-shirts and wearing yellow placards. So I think the crowds may well deal with them themselves as they're identifying themselves so handily. But I hope it will pass off in a good-humoured way. We should remember that our late Queen was shot at when she was on horseback. The horse reared up. Her Majesty gave the horse a good pat and just carried on and didn't show any signs of concern at all. So I think that's the spirit we're looking for on Saturday.
The British spirit, just like Jacob Rees-Mogg, presented in the little porter cabin just behind me when the controlled explosion went off the other night at Buckingham Palace, and he was cool as a cucumber. But look, Sean Bailey, there is a serious point to this, because of course there's a real difference between protest and criminal activity. And it's very, very important, isn't it, that the police do crack down if there is any actual criminal attempt to disrupt the coronation.
A robust response to any disruption is important, if only for the safety of the public, as well as the King. But there'll be a large number of people there, and the police have a duty, a legal duty, to keep the public safe. So a robust response is necessary as well. And what these groups need to bear in mind, they end up defeating their own message. For many people, this is a celebration, and if that celebration is interrupted, they simply will not listen to these people's point. But the deeper thing here, again, I go back to the safety of the public. And as the Met Police rebuild their public reputation, a robust response to keep people safe will be important, I think. And I just want one more comment about the recognition software being used. I actually have a bit of an issue with that, because this is untested. We don't know what this will do to the public, what it will do to individuals. We don't know how fair it is, we don't know how safe it is. And if this software picks you out and you end up being innocent, fine. But the point is the police would have fingerprinted you, that have taken your DNA as a natural course of an investigation. But the start point would have been an unnatural course, which will be this facial recognition software, and I have a little bit of a problem with that. This is not Big Brother just yet.
No.
Indeed. And I do understand that, but the problem is, Amy Nicole, we saw what happened at Buckingham Palace the other night. There are genuine security threats. This is the biggest police operation in history. So can you understand why folk like me, while we absolutely approve of people who want to protest, think actually it's a little bit irresponsible, because you're putting police under all of this extra pressure on a day where they really need to be focused on the real criminals, the terrorists, the people who want to cause big issues. And then also, it's just a bit mean, isn't it? Why are they doing it? Why are they trying to ruin Charles's big day?
Well, I don't think anybody's trying to ruin Charles's big day, but I do think, we have to protect the right to protest. And as long as the protests aren't violent or breaking the law, then these people are entitled to their opinion in the same way as we're all. If you want to celebrate, then you can celebrate. But if you want to go and peacefully protest, you're a taxpayer, you're a citizen in a free society, and you have the right to do that as well. We need to tolerate all opinions, and I think...
But it's a bit mean, isn't it?
I think what's mean is the Met Police essentially threatening anyone who might not agree with the royalist sentiment. I mean, there is something troubling about giving
It's a fine
giving
line.
the force that has
No,
just been...
it's a fine line.
I think it is a fine
And I do
line
understand
in
that.
clamping down on protests, and that's why it's important to not overreach and certainly not be using things like facial recognition. I think that's the fine line. We've seen this week how rules of protest can change, and the new bill, to me, is incredibly troubling. And the Met Police's tweets today, they read like a threat. And I don't think
Amy
we need
Nicole,
that.
Sean Bailey, Alison Pearson do stand by, but the coronation knees up will continue after Saturday's main event. It's not over because there'll be this jubilant and historic concert at Windsor Castle set to wow thousands and thousands of punters on Sunday. Now, overseas stars like Nick Cave and Lionel Richie are booked to rock the biggest stage in British history. But some of our homegrown lovies have used the occasion to prove their anti-Britishness by refusing to perform. Harry Styles, Adele, and Harry and Meghan's mate Elton John are just a few of the party poopers to snub the biggest event in a generation, with one top publicist recently saying stay-away acts potentially feared a backlash from fans if they performed for what he called the PR disaster royals. Well, we're all going to be dancing on the ceiling, regardless, courtesy of headliner Lionel Richie, who got to personally meet the King and Queen in the Buckingham Palace gardens. And you know what? I like Richie's attitude. He said this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to sing at Windsor Castle as he joined thousands of guests for that traditional garden party. And would take that, sharing headlining duties too. You know what? We're in for one of the greatest days of our lives. And I think the likes of Harry Styles, Adele and Elton, I think they're missing out. Now, coming up, as tonight's superstar panellist, Alison Pearson declares the King and Camilla's love story as one of the greatest of all time, is placing the Queen Consort front and centre of the coronation a risky publicity move. My superstar panel thrashed this one out, along with more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages very soon. But next, The Spectator's Cara Kennedy reports that the late Queen branded Meghan evil at a Balmoral drinks reception just last year. Princess Diana's loyal butler and close personal friend, Paul Burrell. He's going to react to that bombshell story. He's live with me at Westminster, at Buckingham Palace. We're back in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Live at Buckingham Palace with Princess Diana's rock and royal insider Paul Burrell. And Queen Consort Camilla will be crowned simply Queen at this Saturday's coronation, but the rift between her two beloved stepsons is wider than ever after Harry's bombshell oversharing of deeply private family moments, including a physical fight at Frogmore Cottage in his memoir Spare, and a string of high-profile interviews earlier this year. Now, the Daily Telegraph's well-connected royal editor Victoria Ward is today reporting that the Duke does not expect to have any personal conversations with his father on the day of the coronation. He is also not expecting to have any meaningful conversations with the Prince and Princess of Wales, such as the gulf between the two brothers that multiple sources have said they cannot see how the relationship will ever be repaired. And as I write in a new Mail Online column today, we know that until her dying breath, the late Diana was vociferously opposed to the idea of Camilla becoming Queen, with the mere mention of the prospect reportedly filling her with equal levels of punch in the guts, dread, immense upset and visceral anger. But I'm also aware that the coronation of King Charles will mean that sooner or later Diana's eldest son William will too be crowned king, ensuring her legacy will continue through her treasured children, or one of them at least. And I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Diana's former butler, close personal confidant. Of course, he's worked for the royal family for many, many years, Paul Burrell. So look, Paul, so much to unpick on this tonight. Firstly, what do you make of this revelation in the Telegraph that it looks like Harry is going to have no conversation with Charles or William on the day of the coronation?
I never expected that would happen anyway, because Harry's going to be in and out in a second, and he's going to be on the aeroplane back to California before they even settled with the crown inside the palace. No, this is a quick visit. You know, he's keeping his foot in the door. His relevance is being royal. He's actually coming to the coronation to please his father. His father wants him to be there, and he wants his two sons to witness the biggest day of his life. And that's quite right, and that's how it should be. But Harry has no role in the coronation and will be sat 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows behind his family. And the atmosphere inside the Abbey is going to be ice cold.
Towards him?
Towards Harry, because they do not forgive him for throwing family members under the bus.
Now look, I actually quoted you in my column for Mail Online today because, you know, I've had to weigh this up for such a long time. I felt deep unease about the idea of Queen Camilla for some time.
Me too.
But for the future of the monarchy, we've got to go with this.
We have to accept the King and Queen. We have to, because I'm a monarchist. And we have to cross that bridge with Charles and Camilla to get to William and Catherine. Because, you see, I'm looking over their shoulders. I'm looking at this short reign that will eventually end up with King William on the throne, with his beautiful wife, Catherine, beside him, that ring on a queen's finger, and Diana's son, King. That is what I'm looking for, and that is the future, and I have to go with the plan. You know, Diana's colours are nailed to my mast. Always will be. I always be loyal and true to her, and I will always support her and William and Catherine, and in a way Harry, because I know Harry's blinkered. I know she's cast a spell on him, but he's still Diana's son, and I feel for him because I don't think his heart has ever mended.
One of our guests earlier in the evening was speculating on what Diana would have done this weekend if she were alive, and they actually thought that it was possible that she would have agreed to attend the coronation and sit alongside Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's ex-husband, in the congregation. What do you think?
Wouldn't that be interesting? I wouldn't have thought that she would pass up such an event, being such a vociferous member of the royal family, so proud of her sons being part of the royal family, and proud of the monarchy. I think she would have attended. I think she would have looked stunning. She would have outshone everyone, much to the anger of some. But she would have done it with grace.
Yeah.
Because she would have moved on herself now, and she would be in her 60s, would have found love, would have found a position in the world, and probably be in Ukraine right now trying to sort the mess out.
Paul, I know that this is something that you never thought, like me, you'd ever say, but from Saturday, Queen Camilla to you, you're okay with that?
Dan, it's a bittersweet moment for me, because having lost our Queen so recently and being devoted to her, being devoted to Diana, and having been part of that history, being part of that triangle all those years ago, I can never forget how cruel and unkind the king was to his former wife. I can't forget that.
Because you saw it at close quarters.
I saw it, and it hurt me too. I know how much it hurt Diana, but I have to move on. And people tell me, Paul, move on, move on. I am moving on. I'm moving on at a snail's pace, because I do want the monarchy to survive. And I will have to accept this. I can't do anything about it. But I can never forget what has happened in the past. And this couple have a lot of history. And I think the people of our country realise that. They realise that there's a lot of baggage that comes with King Charles and Queen Camilla. Are we ready to accept that? But they're doing it in good faith too. They're doing it in good grace. And they are also looking towards the future like me. And one day, William and Kate. But people have discussed why didn't Charles give the throne to William straight away? Well, because he's waited all his life to do it. That's why. He wants his hands on the wheel. He wants to steer the ship. Also, I do think that the king has thought about his son, the Prince of Wales. He's thought, well, let him grow his family, let him have a family life, and by the time his children are grown, William will be ready for the role. So I give it 10 years.
Now, what about this astonishing breaking news from The Spectator today? Cara Kennedy, an up-and-coming royal reporter who we've had on this show, revealing that at a Balmoral drinks reception last year, the Queen described Meghan as evil.
No, I don't believe that, Dan, for a second. I knew Her Majesty well.
You don't think that's her style?
It's not her style. It's not a word she would use. She may say difficult. She may say, I don't understand her. I'm confused by her actions. But don't forget, Dan, the Queen bent over backwards to support this young lady coming into the royal family. She helped her on her first engagement. She offered Sophie to her to be her mentor. And the Queen really did. She said to her, you can continue acting. If you want to continue your role as an actress, then you can.
But
We'll
wasn't
do
the
anything.
point that by last year, the late Queen had realised that Meghan had not only thrown all of those lovely opportunities back in her face, it was more than that, Paul. By that point, the late Queen understood that Meghan was actually trying to destroy the British monarchy.
Absolutely. And Meghan's presence within the royal family became toxic. And somehow they had to remove that. It was a cancer growing in the royal family. And
so you think the late Queen may have had a lot of reservations, which she may have expressed, but she probably didn't use that term.
Evil,
that's your view?
I never heard that word in her vocabulary. Never.
How do you feel about this moment for Charles, a man who you have a long history with too?
Yes.
Has he matured? Is he able to cope with what's coming this weekend?
Well, I have to tell you that he does have quite a temper. You probably know that.
Well, we saw that with the fountain pen, didn't we, in the days
I've seen it in
after the
private.
monarchy.
I've seen it in
The
private.
days after the
It
Queen's funeral.
happened to me in private, and he lives in a world where everyone says yes. And what kind of a person does that make you? Actually, Camilla is the only person that can say no. And she will say no. She'll put her hand on his shoulder and say, Charles, pull back. And I think that is her role for the future, is to be behind the scenes, not to be in front of the camera the whole time as Queen. I think her role is behind the scenes to make sure, to keep him on track. And I think she's the common sense voice.
Can he be a king who protects and secures the future of the monarchy in order for a King William and Queen Kate to take the
He's a traditionalist. He's a traditionalist. You will see that in the coronation ceremony. He wants to retain all those old values, yet he wants another foot in the real world. And it's going to be a very difficult balancing act. As Prince of Wales, he could have his finger in every pie, in the environment, in politics, in everything.
Which is a big risk.
As king, he can't. He's going to have to sit on his hands and he's going to have to keep quiet. Otherwise, the monarchy is in jeopardy. So I think he's
the stakes could not be higher.
No, this is a tectonic plates shifting time for our country.
And will you pledge allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to our late Queen and to Princess Diana.
So you won't do the Archbishop of Canterbury's special pledge of allegiance?
No, Dan, I won't.
The weekend?
I won't. There's too much personal history in my world. Don't shoot me down for not saying that. Because
a lot of people feel the way that you do.
I will accept him as king. I will accept her as queen, and we'll go forward across that bridge together and get to William and Catherine. But
I can sense the emotion from you, Paul. You find this very hard, don't
I know
you?
how.
Because you know how difficult this would have been for Diana.
I lived in a world with a very hurt princess, and I cannot forget those years, Dan. I can't. I have letters at home that are heartbreaking. That says, Charles, you were so cruel to me. And he never loved her. He should never have married her. But then we wouldn't have William and Harry. He should have married Camilla in the first place, and then we would be right. But if William and Kate were being crowned this weekend, they would be dancing in the streets. It would be a joyous atmosphere. Look around you. It's calm. Everyone's here, everyone's camped out in the Mall, everyone's having a good time, but is there heart in it? And I defy anyone on the day not to think of the woman who is not there. The elephant in the room, the one woman who William will be thinking about, Harry will be thinking about, Charles will be thinking about, and even Camilla will be thinking about.
Well, look, that's why I wanted you here tonight, because you are, bless you, Diana's representative on Earth now.
I have to defend her memory and defend her honour, and I can't help it for the rest of my days.
Paul Burrell, very good to speak to you. Thank you so much. Now, coming up in Uncancelled, with the King preparing for the most significant day of his life amidst criticism for giving in to the anti-traditionalist woke mob, and with an awkward reunion with runaway son Harry looming, can our new sovereign secure the monarchy's future? Esteemed royal biographer Tom Bower joins me live later in the show. But next, as the media buzz continues, is tonight's superstar panellist Alison Pearson right to say that the King's relationship with Queen Consort Camilla is one of the greatest love stories of all time? We'll find out what her fellow panellists make of that in 2 short minutes. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends were like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News. the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz, and more front pages have just been delivered. Coronation theme too. The Daily Telegraph leads with comments from the anthem composer for the coronation, Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber, that the King wanted a song that was made for churches, was hummable and would stand the test of time. My goodness, I love Lloyd Webber. Cannot wait to hear it. The Daily Mail front page fumes at China's coronation insult to Britain as Beijing confirms it will send the man behind the Hong Kong democracy crackdowns to the King's special day in place of President Xi. More in the media buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, top Tory Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, the course of true love never did run smooth, and there are fewer better examples of that than the enduring relationship between the King and Queen Consort Camilla, who will officially become Queen at Saturday's coronation, a prospect that was considered near impossible just a few short years ago. Alison has actually written in the Daily Telegraph, really fascinating piece, that Charles and Camilla's is one of the greatest love stories of all time, after weathering decades of cynicism and abuse from both the press and the public to reach the pinnacle of this weekend's coronation. However, not everyone seems to be convinced, with Harry branding Camilla a wicked stepmother in his bombshell memoir Spare. Camilla's presence in Charles and Diana's marriage is still fresh in many folks' memories, and coupled with the King's insistence on rebranding her as his queen, despite the late Queen Elizabeth's wishes that Camilla be known instead as Queen Consort, putting this controversial relationship front and centre of such a significant state event, which could be seen as inflammatory. So, Alison, look, it was fascinating speaking to Paul Burrell before the break. You know, he had tears in his eyes. He is still struggling with this because of how he feels about Diana, but you actually feel like there's a lot to celebrate with the triumphs and tragedies of Camilla and Charles's relationship, which, let's be honest, has been a roller coaster from start to finish.
It has, Dan. I mean, it is a happily ever after, but it's been a pretty dark fairy tale. So Charles and Camilla first met in 1971. I mean, can you imagine? And they were hugely attracted to each other. They made each other laugh. You can still see that now, can't you? And there was a bond. And then, of course, he was obliged, as the heir to the throne, absurdly, to find a Protestant virgin to marry. I mean, looking back now, that feels ridiculous, but that was the pressure on him. He married the wrong woman. I mean, she was a wonderful young woman, Lady Diana Spencer, but she was the wrong woman. And there were very convoluted means of them getting back together. Of course, you know, Angela Levin, your guest, has written very, very well about, you know, when did the affair resume, all that stuff. But it is amazing. When she is crowned queen next to him on Saturday, it's going to be the culmination of a very, very amazing and enduring love. The Duchess of Windsor called her autobiography "The Heart Has Its Reasons," and the hearts of Charles and Camilla have their reasons. And I think he will be thrilled that she's his queen. I do think there's a risk. I do share your doubts about that. I think him calling her queen, he wouldn't settle for queen consort, which is what the late queen did specify. So I don't know. I think it's amazing. I think she's good for him. He was amazingly anguished, tortured young man. And we see him now. Charles is a much happier, more relaxed person. He'll be a better king for having her there.
But Sean, do you worry that people are, especially in the royal family and the British establishment, are almost trying to erase what happened to Diana? It does have to be part of the story, doesn't it?
I mean, it does. You saw when some of the stars turned down performing at the coronation, it's because many of them have big fan groups that still have a love for Diana, and I think they're either trying to stay neutral or demonstrate they still support Diana. Diana was beloved, and I think for your younger viewers, they might not understand just how important she was to the British public, and that will always be part of the King's story. But one thing I'll say, on a personal level, he's taken an enormous risk by insisting she's called the Queen, and she must, at least on a personal level, really appreciate that.
Amy, do you celebrate Charles and Camilla as one of the greatest love stories of all time?
I think that their love story for them is a lovely one, but it did have quite a fair bit of collateral damage. However, Camilla can be many things to many people. She can be whatever she is to Prince Harry, but the thing is, she is the world to Charles.
They were the same age.
Yeah. OK, well, look, Alison Pearson, Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey do stand by. Greatest Britain Uni and Jackass coming up. But while Harry still hasn't arrived in the UK ahead of the biggest day of his dad's life, William and Kate have been building the coronation's bank holiday fever as they made a trip to the pub. At the ceremony on Saturday, they're bound to be travelling by horse and carriage, aren't they? But today, the Prince and Princess of Wales were going underground. The couple made it through the barriers without a hitch at Acton Main Line tube station to make their first trip on the Elizabeth line, named after William's grandmother, the late Queen. And they happened to bump into social media sensation and railway enthusiast. I'm pretty sure this wasn't a coincidence. Francis Bourgeois, look.
Bye-bye.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you.
Hi, how you doing? Hi, nice to meet you. I hope you enjoy the Elizabeth line.
Yeah, be good.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Cheerio.
Well, that's what you call a viral clip, right? After that, they disembarked at Tottenham Court Road in Soho and were welcomed by adoring crowds before visiting the Dog and Duck pub. Now, naturally, William got stuck in behind the bar and tried his hand at pouring a pint of cider. And according to waitress Bernie Kidson, Britain's next in line to the throne, poured the perfect pint. What was the pint? I hear you ask. Kingmaker, of course. Lovely pictures there. And with William and Kate, now the immediate heirs to the throne, the couple's commitment to the royal institution cannot be questioned, in my opinion. Now, coming up, is the King's long-awaited coronation a just reward for a man who waited 70 years to take the crown, often feeling overlooked and underappreciated? The celebrations may well begin early for our new monarch, as I crown tonight's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, and uncancelled, as the King prepares for the most significant day of his life while facing criticism for giving in to the anti-traditionalist woke mob, and with an uncomfortable face-to-face reunion with runaway son Harry inching closer, can our new King handle the pressure? The country's top royal biographer, Tom Bower, reveals all live from Buckingham Palace. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time now for the man who's covered every dramatic twist and turn of Charles' ascension to the throne, Britain's top royal author Tom Bower. And among a myriad of challenges on the biggest day of the King's life this weekend, will be coming face to face with his estranged son, Prince Harry. They will meet for the first time since the publication of Harry's hit job memoir Spare, where the Duke of Sussex trashed everything from his dad's parenting skills to calling his Queen wife Camilla dangerous and a villain. So, with King Charles being thrust into the ultimate pressure cooker this Saturday, can he deal with the heat and secure the future of the monarchy? In his hugely critical book on Charles from 2018, Rebel King, The Making of a Monarch, Tom Bower described him as a pampered, petulant and self-pitying prince who has in the past struggled to overcome his unpopularity. So Tom, has the King changed enough since you penned that damning assessment to save the British monarchy?
Well, I think the book gave him a great shock, and undoubtedly he took note of what I said, all the criticisms that many people who worked for him gave me, that he was a petulant, self-indulgent man who would never listen to the advice if it didn't suit his own prejudices, and fired people who didn't agree with him. But I think he has moderated his manner. But let's face it, tomorrow, the coronation really is a charade in the sense that Charles has orchestrated the lot. He's orchestrated his image, he's orchestrated this great love match with Camilla, and there are many people, and Burrell, of course, is one of the many people who see Camilla as a cruel woman, and Charles is cruel also to Diana. But I think the media in Britain has decided that they've got to support the King because we need a monarchy. And so Charles, to that extent, has been hugely successful. 20 years of manipulating and managing his image, especially after my book came out, when he completely changed the way in which he did operate, especially on the finances, especially his travel, especially on the sort of luxuries which he indulged with. He just cut that out from the public view. And so Saturday, in fact, will be a celebration. But really, after that, the honeymoon is over. I think then King Charles will have to prove himself.
Because certainly the broadcast media, Tom, I mean, they seem out to get the British monarchy. ITV News tonight running a big poll talking about a wave of republicanism sweeping the country. There's definitely that vibe on the BBC and Sly 2. So while I think you're right, the newspapers certainly support Charles and Camilla, I think he's got a rocky road ahead, which brings us, of course, to the rocky road of Harry and Meghan, who have caused so much damage, especially internationally. And this weekend, Charles and Camilla have to come face to face with this guy. How's that going to work?
Well, we don't know actually where Harry's going to be seated.
No.
Seated in the Abbey, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's seated completely out of their eye line. I'm sure that's what both the King and the Queen Consort have asked for. But the point is that from Harry's point of view, Camilla really was the woman who made his own mother very, very unhappy and behaved very badly towards Diana. And there's no doubt that this is not the great love match. Her great love was for Andrew Parker Bowles, and that didn't work out. So I think to an extent, Harry has an argument and some truth in that his stepmother, so to speak, has not been the greatest asset in his own life. And she did cause problems for his own mother. And from Charles's point of view, he wasn't a great father when Harry had lost his mother. He abandoned him a lot, and so he feels guilty. But of course, Harry has been phenomenally disloyal. He has behaved appallingly for a grown man to treat your father, especially the king and everything else, and the country the way he has. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult for King Charles, but I'm sure that they'll manage it, that if Harry does turn up and doesn't, by some fluke, miss his plane in LA or get grounded by fog in Iceland, that somehow he won't have a role, he won't be present during that whole ceremony.
What do you make of this report from The Spectator today, Tom, that the Queen last year at Balmoral at a dinner party referred to Meghan as evil and said that she could see right through her?
Well, I do think that she was very disparaging, and I think I had quite a few bits about that.
Well, of course, you revealed on that on the day of Prince Philip's funeral, she said, "Thank goodness Meghan's not coming."
Well, that was the Queen.
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
The Queen, and the real Elizabeth the Queen, not the pretend,
no, exactly.
not the pretend Queen.
Don't be naughty, Tom.
But no, I do think that. I mean, Harry has behaved appallingly towards Camilla. He is the Queen. He has said some terrible things, and it was unnecessary. And I can believe that she lost her temper with him, or lost her cool with him. And the sort of thing that Camilla would say is, quite frankly, that he has behaved atrociously, and that is, of course, before she read or heard what he said about her in the book, which was really very uncharitable, unnecessary.
It's interesting, isn't it, though, because I think we can say that Charles and William's once fractious relationship has certainly improved over the past couple of years. It almost feels, Tom, like having a common enemy in Harry and Meghan has brought them together. And looking at all of the polling this week, William and Kate remain Charles's biggest assets, and they're going to play a key role on Saturday.
Well, absolutely, and there's no doubt about it that if Charles, which some people believed, had gone off to Italy with Camilla and left the throne to William and Kate, then somehow the monarchy would be infinitely more popular than it is today. I mean, Charles does have a Herculean task to win over the Republicans and win over the dissenters. But I do think that the Republicans are egging the cake. They're not as popular as people would like to think. They're a tiny minority. I think 70% of this country certainly would vote for a monarchy instead of President Johnson or President Prescott.
I totally agree, and you know what? I sense a different mood in the air over the past couple of days. I completely agree the last couple of weeks people have been a bit ho-hum about this coronation. Something has changed. I think there's a sense that as a country we want to get behind King Charles.
Well, we want to get behind King Charles because there's no better alternative, and because he symbolises 1,000 years of history, and because we are a monarchy, thank goodness we're a monarchy, and he has done an enormous amount of good.
This has to work.
It has to work, and he has done a lot of good. I mean, he's a flawed man, but that's because he's had 60 years waiting, apprenticeship, so to speak. So we just hope that he pulls it off. That's why I think people are behind it. And those who are against it, they're the people who are against everything. They're against British society. They're against Britain altogether. They would like us to become part of Africa or
Which
something.
Is why I think the BBC is liking it so much. Tom Bauer, absolutely brilliant to speak to you. We'll speak next week when we've seen exactly what has gone down. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And my superstar panel return. Alison Pearson, who's your nominee for tonight's GB?
My nomination is King Charles III, a fundamentally decent man who finally gets to start the day job. But please, Your Majesty, have a haircut before your big day on Saturday.
Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My Great Britain is the great British public who will be celebrating the coronation of the new king, shouting and screaming their support for our new king as he is coronated.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee.
Right, so I kept in the royal theme and I picked Lady Pamela Hicks because I'm planning a wedding at the moment and I know the stress of a guest list. Now, King Charles had to slim down the guest list to the coronation, which meant he couldn't invite the Queen's former bridesmaid and lady-in-waiting, that's Lady Pamela Hicks. But she took it on board and graciously accepted the decision to not invite her and said, it's a democracy over a meritocracy and it's just sensible. What a legend.
Yeah, I thought it was really sad that Lady Pamela Hicks was not invited, if I'm completely honest, and I'm also still awaiting your wedding invitation too, Amy, so maybe I haven't made the cut. But look, my winner is King Charles, of course it has to be. We need him to be our greatest Britain. Well done, Alison Pearson. Union Jackass time now. Alison, who are you plumping for?
I'm picking the lefty hater Ash Sarkar, who appeared on Newsnight and described the royal family as a cartel of some very weird people. And Ash should know about a cartel of some very weird people.
Indeed, she's part of Navarra Media, say no more. But let's have a look at this moment.
But when it comes to this generation in particular, young people are interested in the values of fairness and in the values of representation. Whatever way you slice it, the monarchy is neither a fair nor a representative institution.
Yawn. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is the Coronation Disruptors. The right to protest is a fundamental part of our democracy, but it isn't right to disrupt other people. This is not the time to make a big scene. Many people have been enjoying the coronation. They should make their scene afterwards, because then we might give them a hearing.
And Amy Nicol, your nominee.
I've picked the Met Police because I don't think it's necessary to be threatening people ahead of the coronation, particularly Republicans, for just wanting to voice their opinion, as they have the right to do so.
Oh, I think that's a bit unfair, Amy, given the tough job that they have this week, and I'm going to be totally honest. So I'm going to go with Sean Bailey, the Coronation Disruptors, not because I disagree with their right to protest, but I just think they should get some haircuts, get a real job, let the people who want to celebrate the coronation celebrate the coronation. What is their issue? It's very churlish. Oh, look, I hope you all celebrate the coronation. Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicol, you've been absolutely brilliant tonight. Thank you so much for joining me live from Buckingham Palace for a very special edition of the show with all of the best royal experts in the country. Stick with GB News for the most patriotic coronation coverage over the next few days. And I'm back on Bank Holiday Monday night at 9 p.m. for a special edition of the show. We're going to cover everything that happened with the coronation, but of course, lots of fallout from the local election results too. I'll see you Monday night, 9 p.m. Have a fabulous coronation weekend. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended.